a guy who's very familiar with the area. Right now, though, he is doing the pre- and post-game with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, along with ESPN College Football. He'll be on the Deuce with Middle Tennessee and Georgia. He's got his own podcast now called Spit and Fire. You can also check him out doing Jets preseason games. And if you're on the Home Shopping Network, you can see Anthony Becht modeling some NFL clothing. And you can hear him right now on the Boardwalk Honda hotline on 97.3 ESPN. Ant, what's going on, my man?
Gil, you couldn't have chopped that up worse than anybody I've ever passed it on to.
I mean, that's a laundry list of things for you, man.
I mean, first of all, I'm not a model. That's number one, so that's off.
He's a dreamy-looking man, believe me.
He's just complimenting your looks.
Well, you got a lot going on. You got the college football, you're doing the Jets, you're doing the Buccaneers, you're down in Tampa.
No doubt.
But, of course, you've got ties to the local area as well. And, hey, man, I know a lot of people were surprised with the Bucs in the 48 points against the Saints in week number 1. I mean, listening and doing some radio down in Tampa, was a reaction from the fans, surprise? I mean, was this like a, holy mackerel, who are these Buccaneers, or was this something that was expected? There was a lot of expectations for this team last year.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I was surprised. I mean, I was expecting to see a team that could go out there and be forceful on offense. I wasn't quite sure that with Ryan Fitzpatrick they'd be able to have the success that they had, but you know, they got great protection up front in a hostile environment. The offensive line, played well, and Fitzy was on fire, man. And I got to give, Todd Monken was given the reins of calling the plays for the preseason, and him and Dirk Cutter kind of let that go into the regular season. And I thought the flow was good. So everything was kind of clicking, and I felt like from a distribution to the weapon standpoint, Fitzpatrick was on fire.
Now, in this area, everything's about a controversy. Week 1, are people saying, hey, we don't need Jameis Winston, Fitzpatrick's the man, or are people cognizant of you see that Ryan Fitzpatrick some weeks and then you get the other guy other weeks?
That's a great question. I don't know what we're going to get next week. I can't imagine it'll be as boisterous as it was last week. But, listen, I mean, Ryan's got some big-time targets to throw to. I mean, from right to left, he's got as good as tight end, wide receiver tandem as maybe, anybody in the league. So it's just really about, does he get the protection? I mean, on the road, they did well. I got to think when they come home, that'll be even better with the temperature high and the sun blazing. Those things can help the Buccaneers come out and bring some of that firepower on the field. Fitzy last year when he filled in for Winston, did a nice job. We were all kind of waiting for those mistakes or those kind of games where he just kind of turned into that guy that we've seen over the past years with the Bills and the Jets, and we didn't see that last season. So, I think he felt good. He felt comfortable. There's no real pressure on him, honestly. I mean, he's just going out there and having fun, and it showed last week.
Anthony Becht with us here on the Sports Bash, 97.3 ESPN, part of the Buccaneers pre- and post-game. And, of course, you can see him doing college football Saturday night, Middle Tennessee and Georgia on ESPN2, 7:15. Now, one of the things with this Buccaneers team that's interesting, you mentioned Deshaun Jackson. Now, whether he plays or not, that could be a big factor in this game. But Mike Evans, what a specimen he is. And the Eagles are a little smallish in the secondary. I mean, there's one thing about this Eagles defense that might be an interesting matchup is the fact that you got Evans, this big physical guy, and some smaller D-backs there. So what kind of receiver are the Eagles secondary going to be as we see Evans up on the screen right now here? That's a big, big physical guy. And now, it looks like he's kind of coming into his own.
Yeah, I mean, some would say he's getting paid like a top 5 wide receiver. And, he can beat you deep. He's got deceptive speed. You don't have to be accurate as a thrower to get him the football because he's got great range being, a 6'3.5", 6'4" wide receiver. And he's strong and tough. He'll go over the middle. Those contested balls is his specialty. Deshaun Jackson obviously broke out last week as well. And I'll be honest with you, Deshaun Jackson should have had 10 touchdowns last year if Jameis Winston could have gotten him the football accurately down the field. I mean, I saw this stuff last season. It's just that they haven't been able to connect. So I see the same guy that's just getting a chance to catch the football. I'd say this though, Chris Godwin is the second receiver after Mike Evans. I mean, he's going to be out there. He earned the position. In 3 wide receiver set, Deshaun's out there, but Chris Godwin's coming into his own as well, a second-year player out of Penn State, and he's very good, very strong, very physical. Think of a Sanu kind of guy from the Falcons that is a physical receiver, can run good routes. And then the tight ends. I mean, O.J. Howard, he's on pace to being just where they want him to be, one of the top receiving tight ends in the league. Another guy that's just yoked up, big as hell, 6'6", and he can run with the best of them. So, your distribution across the field, you can't cover everybody, so that'll be the key, at least from the Eagles' standpoint, is how can they match up and who's the weakness heading into the game.
One area of strength for the Eagles is obviously that defensive line. They rotate a lot of guys. They get to you, man. And it looked like Fitzpatrick had time last week, and that's why he was able to kind of maybe get off for 400 yards and 4 touchdowns. But that's not going to be the same this week. How does that Bucs offensive line, is that a worrisome area against this Eagles front, or is that an area where they're strong and might be able to stand up to this Eagles pass rush?
I think it'll be a good matchup. I mean, I'd say there's 4 guys across the board that are pretty damn good. We have one of the top centers in the league now, Ryan Jensen, and he was pretty much impenetrable in the game. Dotson at the right tackle position is a very solid player. Ali Marpet is as good as they come at guard. So this will be a good showing. I'm interested to see how it goes. I believe Nigel Brandon is back for you guys, so that'll be an upgrade from a defensive standpoint. But listen, this is a tough place to come down in the month of September and give that the effort and the stamina. You'll be tested, obviously, with the humidity and the weather, and hopefully, the Buccaneers feel that there's an advantage there as the game goes on. That there might be some wear down or some loss of energy as the game goes on. If it's sunny and the weather seems to be what it's supposed to.
Hey, Anthony, we saw Michael Kendricks on Hard Knocks a couple weeks ago give his breakdowns when they were preparing for the Eagles in that preseason game. How much of an impact will Curry and Allen have for the Bucs and their game plan for the Eagles this week?
I got to think it'll be big. I mean, I played on teams, and, when I was with the former team and played the team the year after when I was with another one, and, you give some things, some signals. Obviously, they're going to hear some calls and some things. I would say Eagles have to change up some wrinkles and things of that nature. But I think from at least understanding your opponent, I feel like they could probably break down better than everybody on at least on the offensive line and the tight end position as far as what they can or cannot do, their weaknesses. And I think that's a huge advantage. I mean, those are 2 veteran players that are still playing at a high level, that are very smart football intellect-wise, and I got to think that they're going to give as much information as they can, just from a player standpoint, to give hopefully give an advantage to what it'll be. I mean, look, you look at our defensive line. I mean, this is pretty good itself. I mean, we only got 1 sack in the game, but they're going to have to come up big this week because our secondary is pretty banged up. We're going to be potentially playing 2 rookies at the corner positions. And that was a shaky area in the secondary as well, already going into the season full go. So this JPP, Curry, Gerald McCoy, they're going to have to come up big in this football game. So we'll see how that matchup goes as well.
Yeah, that's a good point, because Vinny Curry, Bo Allen, 2 guys that played with the Eagles. And, of course, the Eagles' offensive line, very good. But as you mentioned, the secondary is an area. The Eagles, though, Jeffrey's out. They're a little thin at wide receiver at this point. And, you wonder if just looking at that matchup, if the Eagles still try to exploit that secondary, is that the weakness of the Buccaneers defense, that secondary there?
Yeah, if I were to look at a matchup that I worry about is if, a receiving tight end is part of the offense. In the past, guys like Greg Olsen and company were able to really take advantage of the middle of the field and the matchups with the linebackers and strong safeties. Obviously, with Zach Ertz and Goddard, those are 2 guys that, present challenges for the Buccaneers. And, against the Saints last week, they gave up a lot of yards in between the 20s. And when they got to the red zone, they were able to be effective and they were able to produce turnovers. So, again, those turnovers sometimes come in bunches. Sometimes they don't come for a couple games, so it'll be dependent on how they do. I'd expect them to play a bit better in this football game being at home, but that doesn't guarantee anything, especially if you had two rookie corners playing in MJ Stewart and Carlton Davis that are coming into the league this year.
Yeah, now like you mentioned Zach Ertz. He did not have a great week last week. They also had Dallas Goedert, who they got in the second round. You wonder if this is a week where they could really, find some room against this Tampa team. But, the Eagles' running game should be interesting. I'm interested to get your take on Jay Ajayi, Darren Sproles, Corey Clement, and how they kind of factor in against, can you run the ball? Last week I saw Kamara had a huge game, but a lot of that was catching the ball out of the backfield.
You're right, it was. I thought they did a nice job tackling. What's been good about this defensive line is it's kind of opened up the sideline-to-sideline running and some of those gaps for the linebackers. Levante David and Quan Alexander are two of probably the fastest linebackers in the league. So if they get freedom and they don't get caught up in traffic by double-team blocks or get pushed from the front, then, they're going to be productive in the run game. And, I would say this. I thought the Eagles rushed the ball effectively. I think they were just over 4 yards a carry in the game. And I just remember last year how that became a bigger part of the offense week every week from the start of the season to the end. So I expect a heavy dose of Ajayi in this football game, or at least whoever's back there. I thought maybe that, when you're playing a game like this, you're going to lean on your backs a little bit with the heat and try to get a good mix. You guys are obviously deep at that position, so it could be a point of emphasis for at least the Eagles' game plan coming down here to Tampa.
All right, Anthony Becht is with us, former first-round pick of the New York Jets. He also does the Jets preseason color and pre- and post-game for all Jets home games as well. So I want to get your take on, number one, what you saw from Sam Darnold in the preseason in your time calling those Jets games, and then what you thought of him in the first game the other night. What you saw in the preseason, did you kind of does that translate, or did he exceed expectations from what you saw there?
Well, he definitely exceeded. I knew. I covered the kid in college. I broke him down. I watched a lot of his film. I think the biggest thing for me in the preseason was I was trying to every week find something to point towards a negative on why you shouldn't play him rather than to collect the positives. He started checking a lot of boxes, as soon as he got in a practice uniform, for to be quite honest with you. His accuracy on the move, his ability to evade the rush. He's a very accurate passer and a smart passer. He throws with anticipation. He's got a strong arm. He mastered the playbook immediately, which was huge. You can throw out everything that they have, and he's able to pick it up, and he understands the protection game well. I think the biggest sell that he had to kind of do through the preseason was, do his teammates believe they can win more games with him than Josh McCown or Teddy Bridgewater? And I think as you spoke to them every single week and we interviewed these guys, they were just kind of shaking their head like, man, this kid is good. We believe in him. And I think the biggest key was adversity. How does he react to adversity? How will he be in the biggest stage? And I think if there's any adversity in your entire career, when you're on Monday Night Football, in the very first snap, you throw a pick six. I would say most rookie quarterbacks would collapse and fold and have issues throughout that game. And I'll tell you what, man, that kid shook it off like it was nothing and played a great game throughout. Of course, he had some help, with the run game and the defensive play with the turnovers, but he came out firing, man. They keep saying he's a bit unflappable. I'd say the biggest trait that I think I can appreciate from him, and I think Joe Namath actually said it, and I agree with him, is he's got something special going on inside of his head. And I think he's just mastered that. And when you play and you don't have those mental worries and you're able to shake things off and play with confidence, but yet don't show it and glorify it, this kid's special, man. So it's going to be tough. He's going to have some ups and downs. He's got obviously these 3-game stretch over 10, 11 days that he's hitting now with the Monday night, Sunday, and then Thursday night games coming up. But I'll tell you what, man, if the weapons around him are healthy and the guys do what they're doing, I think he can have some success and win more games than they did last year.
Anthony, should Jets fans be excited about this season? It looks like it's a completely wide-open AFC. Or are they a couple years away? They dominated Detroit on the road. That was a nice win.
I would say this. I would say their defense is going to be one of the top defenses in the league. They're very young in the safety position and a few guys up front. But these guys are special players. You know, Marcus May didn't play last week. One of their top players, a young player, but Jamal Adams is all over the field. This kid gets it. I mean, if you want to build around a kid that's a young player that just understands the game and brings fire to your football team, this kid is special. You know, Tremaine Johnson got paid big cash from the Rams to be a shutdown corner, along with Claiborne on the other side. And you got linebackers that, you know, Avery Williamson came over from the Titans. He's been a 100 tackle guy the last 4 or 5 seasons. And Darren Lee, who people were worried about him in his 3rd year, if he'll show up, he gets 2 picks and he's flying around and making big plays on the field. So, you know, the defensive line and getting a pass rush in that 3-4 system will be big. They don't have a pass rusher on the outside. They've been trying to get one, work some guys in. So what Todd Bowles is going to do, he's going to do it a little more exotically through with the safeties and the backers and mixing it up and just working the line of scrimmage. And it worked big time. When those guys buy in, you know, there's no better coach than Todd Bowles if he's got a smart team around him that understands the philosophies of what they're trying to do. And that showed against the Lions on Monday night.
Now we're talking with Anthony Becht, former first-round pick of the Jets. He now calls Jets preseason games. He's a part of their pre and post for Jets home games, Bucs weekly analyst, and you're also doing the college football Saturday night, Middle Tennessee and Georgia. I just want to get some, you know, you talked about Darnold and how you studied him. Will Grier, West Virginia, I'm sure that you watch a lot of him, being a WVU grad. McSorley from Penn State. They're 2 guys that are kind of shining early at that quarterback position, just trying to get inside your head early what the quarterbacks look like in college football for the fans out there.
Yeah, so, you know, with Hurricane Florence, they actually just this afternoon changed the Georgia game to a noon kickoff on ESPN News. So a lot of games now are getting clustered early in the day and canceled, so they're basically just trying to move them around and get them in to keep everybody safe. We should be good, though, in Athens, but yeah, you know, I got to do Drew Lock as well last week in Missouri. So, Drew Lock, Will Grier, you know, these guys are all very, very good college quarterbacks. They all play in systems that, to me, don't necessarily translate and give them the kind of the mental capacity to kind of jump into an offensive system in the league. I think they all have the skill sets. They're just not there yet from an IQ standpoint. And, you know, they're going to be good players. I don't know if I see anybody that's a standout first-round guy. We always push guys out there because, you know, the need for the quarterback position. But if you look around the NFL right now, I'll tell you, almost every team now feels like they have a guy. So it'll be interesting to see. This will be a top-heavy defensive draft for sure coming up next year. But I think, you know, there's some players out there. I mean, the kid at Georgia, Jake Fromm, he's only in his 2nd season. But he may be the smartest guy as far as the system that he runs, his pro style. He has some heavy protection responsibilities on his plate. They don't call plays from the sideline. You know, after next season, after his junior year, he's going to think. I think he'll be that next guy to kind of shine and come out of the league, come out of college that gets it. But Drew Lock, Will Grier, Ryan Finley from North Carolina State this season. These are players that are going to have to prove themselves and prove what they know of the game, and that's going to be the biggest sell coming into next season.
Yeah, and I was looking forward to Grier versus Finley this weekend. That game was canceled, West Virginia, NC State. Anthony_Becht on Twitter. You can check out his new Spit and Fire podcast as well. He's got the episodes posted on his Twitter page. And don't forget to check him out on the Home Shopping Network. That picture, man, it looked model-esque, the photo that we found of you.
Yeah, it does. I mean, I do have to stand in front of the gear and things of that nature, but I'll say it's a fun show, man. I enjoy it. You know, we talk some really fun, downplayed NFL talk, but it's a great gig, and it's just diversity, man. Just kind of spread yourself out a little bit. It's local down here in St. Pete, so it's been a nice change up for me and a different audience base as well.
Well, we've got rain here every single day this week. I know that people, there's a lot of rain and stuff, but what's it, like 90? Going to be 91 and sunny in Tampa for the Eagles and Bucs this weekend?
I'm hoping it's 100 and sunny. That's what pays dividends for this team in these 2 months. So we'll see what happens. I mean, it'll be sticky. So, I remember playing the Eagles way back. I don't know, what was it? When McNabb was puking all over the field, and we kicked a 60-plus yarder to win the game at the end, and you could see an exhausted team. So, we'll see how it goes. This is why they have these games in September in Tampa, and I think this team, they have to use that to their advantage, because if they just line up and just expect to win like last week, it's not going to happen.
All right, that should be fun. Big game from the Bucs last week against the Saints. It's Eagles-Saints this Sunday. You can hear the game right here on 97.3 ESPN. Anthony Becht, our guest here on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. Thanks, pal. I'll talk to you soon.
Always a pleasure, Mike. Be well, man. Have a good weekend.